Aliens thought they could crush humanity without a fight. But they never expected humans to retreat silently, plan carefully, and strike back with unmatched intelligence. Every move, every decision, every silent operation revealed the courage and cunning of a species determined to survive. Watch how humans turn the impossible into hope, strategy, and resilience. Don't miss a single moment of this epic story. Subscribe now for more thrilling adventures. Sensors across human colonies started picking up strange signals that did not match any known patterns or communications. At first, the anomalies were small, almost insignificant, but over time, they grew stronger and more frequent. Reports came in from distant outposts, describing sudden power fluctuations, unusual energy bursts, and unidentified ships appearing and disappearing in moments. The scientists monitoring the data felt a deep unease. Something about the movements seemed deliberate, intelligent, and precise. They reported their findings to the council, hoping that the leaders would understand the gravity of the situation. Inside the council chambers, screens flickered with real-time feeds from dozens of planets, each showing glimpses of alien machinery or unidentifiable craft moving with coordination. Council members leaned over consoles, pointing at anomalies, debating whether these were accidental readings or the beginning of a coordinated threat. Some argued that humanity had faced strange phenomena before and survived, while others warned that this was different. The patterns were too organized, too systematic to ignore. Diplomats and military advisors spoke in hushed tones, knowing that the decision they were about to make could affect billions. Meanwhile, across evacuated research stations, communication drones tried to follow the alien movements, but every attempt seemed to fail. The aliens were careful, almost cautious in their approach, avoiding direct contact but leaving signs of observation. The council realized that the aliens were not random in their actions. They were mapping human systems, gathering intelligence, and studying human behavior from a distance. Every anomaly was a message, every unexplained occurrence a test. It became clear that humanity was being watched and analyzed. Council members began analyzing patterns, connecting dots across the galaxy, noticing that the alien movements coincided with critical human resource hubs, major transport networks, and planetary defenses. It was as if the aliens knew exactly where to probe for weakness. Panic began to ripple through the chambers as the realization sank in that these were not random skirmishes or accidental encounters. This was a methodical advance, a strategy designed to understand, assess, and eventually overpower human systems if left unchecked. Reports from military outposts brought more disturbing news. Automated drones had detected silent fleets shadowing human vessels, energy signatures that matched nothing in human databases. These fleets were not engaging yet, but their presence was undeniable. Scientists ran simulations trying to predict the aliens' next move. But the data only created more questions. Some simulations suggested that the aliens could anticipate human responses almost perfectly. Every defensive strategy seemed to encounter unseen counters, leaving council members frustrated and fearful. Even within the council, disagreements surfaced. Some members argued for preemptive strikes, believing that waiting would only allow the aliens to gain the upper hand. Others pushed for caution, suggesting observation and study to better understand the adversary. Tempers flared as debates became heated. Every word was weighed against the potential for disaster. Outside the chambers, colonies continued to send fragmented reports, each one more alarming than the last, describing unexplainable disappearances of ships, subtle manipulations of planetary systems, and the eerie feeling that humans were being tracked wherever they moved. A few keen observers noticed subtle patterns in the alien movements, almost like a chess game. Each probe or fleet movement seemed designed to force a reaction, to see how humans would respond under pressure. It was intelligence, yes, but also patience, a waiting game to study weaknesses. Council members who recognized this began to worry, because patience on the alien side suggested confidence, and confidence often meant overwhelming power and planning beyond anything humans had encountered. The sense of urgency grew, knowing that the warning signs were not just warnings, they were harbingers of a larger plan. As the hours stretched into days, the council realized they were at a crossroads. Humanity had seen strange phenomena before, but never with such precision and apparent purpose. The warning signs were clear. The aliens were not exploring, not negotiating, not seeking peaceful contact. They were preparing, assessing, and calculating. And the Council had to decide how to respond before it was too late. The weight of responsibility pressed heavily on each member. Every decision could mean survival or annihilation. And the first signs of the coming storm had already begun to ripple across the galaxy, leaving humans watching, waiting, and wondering if they were already too late. As alien fleets drew closer to human worlds, tension gripped the council chambers. Alarms from distant colonies flashed constantly, showing fleets moving with speed and precision that outmatched human defenses. Debates erupted among council members, some urging immediate confrontation, while others warned that humanity was not ready for open war. The pressure was immense. Every second mattered, and the weight of billions of lives pressed heavily on their shoulders. The council convened an emergency session, the atmosphere thick with urgency and fear. Holographic displays projected the approaching alien armadas, showing formations that suggested not just invasion but careful planning. Every movement of the aliens was deliberate, calculated, and almost predictive. Arguments flew across the chamber, voices rising and falling as each member tried to assert their perspective. Some believed that standing ground would show strength, but many feared annihilation. The idea of retreat, once unthinkable, began to take hold. Secret meetings were held behind closed doors. The council debated strategies that would remain hidden from the public. Survival became the primary goal, not victory. The only way to save human lives, they reasoned, was to withdraw silently, to evacuate major colonies before the aliens could strike directly. Plans were drawn with meticulous detail, showing evacuation routes, secure locations for key populations, and hidden paths for transport fleets. Every contingency was considered, yet uncertainty remained because no one could fully predict alien behavior. Orders were sent quietly to fleet commanders and colony governors, instructions to prepare for rapid, covert relocation. Ships loaded with civilians, essential supplies, and critical technology moved in secrecy. Communication was restricted to prevent leaks that might alert the aliens. Each commander faced the grim reality of abandoning the homes, cities, and worlds they had fought to protect. Yet the Council insisted this was necessary. The safety of humanity required sacrifices, and the evacuation had to appear seamless to avoid panic. As the operation began, human colonies emptied under the cover of darkness. Sensors and drones monitored alien movements, always just out of range of detection. It was a tense dance of speed and stealth. Families left behind memories and belongings. Soldiers watched over the transports with grim determination. The aliens remained close but non-engaging, their intentions unclear. And this silence added to the fear, leaving humans to wonder if the retreat was being observed, studied, and anticipated. Within the council, unease spread like wildfire. Some members questioned whether retreat was the right choice. Others worried that the aliens had already calculated the move and would exploit the vulnerability. Arguments erupted over ethics, strategy, and timing. Debates about leadership and responsibility grew heated. Yet despite the disagreements, the decision to evacuate continued because the alternative, facing the aliens with unprepared forces, seemed far worse. Survival demanded action, even if it meant leaving much behind. The evacuation revealed cracks in human systems, logistical challenges, and the strain of moving millions of people across multiple planets. Yet despite the difficulties, humans demonstrated resilience, ingenuity, and determination. Engineers devised clever ways to conceal transport fleets. Medical teams managed the sick and injured under extreme stress. Pilots navigated through dangerous sectors while avoiding alien detection. And every success, no matter how small, was a victory, proof that humanity could endure even when forced into flight. As the last transport ships departed, the Council remained behind, isolated and exposed, tasked with monitoring alien movements, coordinating the remnants of human infrastructure, and preparing for what came next. The emptiness of once bustling colonies weighed heavily on them. A mixture of relief and guilt filled the chambers. Yet even in the shadow of retreat, a quiet determination began to grow. A hope that humanity could survive, adapt, and one day return. Understanding that retreat was not surrender, but a strategic pause in a conflict that had only just begun. Once the evacuation of human colonies was underway, the Council found themselves increasingly isolated. Empty corridors and silent chambers replaced the bustling activity of staff and advisors. The only sounds were the soft hum of servers and distant alerts from monitoring systems. Messages from fleeing colonies arrived in fragments, often corrupted or delayed, leaving the Council struggling to understand the true scope of the situation. Every incoming report seemed more alarming than the last, showing signs of alien probes, disturbances in planetary systems, and unexplained failures of critical infrastructure. Council members gathered around holographic displays, analyzing incomplete data, trying to predict alien movements, but the patterns were elusive. The aliens seemed to anticipate human responses, moving just beyond the reach of human forces. This constant uncertainty frayed nerves and heightened tension. Disagreements arose over interpretation of the reports. Some argued for a cautious wait-and-watch approach, while others insisted on proactive measures. Every decision carried immense consequences, and the pressure to act wisely weighed heavily on each member. The Council became a hub of intense debate and scrutiny. Alliances shifted as members disagreed on strategy. Tempers flared during long sessions, and personal fears began to influence professional judgment. Accusations of incompetence and betrayal surfaced. Some council members wondered if the retreat itself had given the aliens an advantage, if humanity's silence was being exploited. The burden of responsibility was enormous, knowing that every delay or misstep could cost countless lives. And yet, there were no clear solutions, only calculated guesses and strategies with uncertain outcomes. Meanwhile, sensors on remote planets detected alien probes moving subtly among abandoned human outposts, analyzing infrastructure, gathering data on technology, and leaving behind signs of experimentation. The Council monitored these reports with growing horror, realizing that their retreat had not gone unnoticed, and that the aliens were using the time and space left behind to study human weaknesses. Attempts to respond were limited, as direct engagement could reveal the Council's presence and put remaining human leaders at risk, forcing them into a position of careful observation and cautious restraint. Inside the Council chambers, fear and anxiety permeated every discussion. Every member felt the weight of watching humanity's future from a distance. They were responsible for lives they could no longer directly protect, and each decision became a moral and strategic dilemma. Debates about evacuation protocols, defensive strikes, and communication strategies dominated daily life, but uncertainty hung over every choice. The Council realized they were making decisions in partial darkness, relying on incomplete information while knowing that the aliens were likely steps ahead. Some Council members tried to maintain calm, reminding colleagues that their role was to safeguard human knowledge, technology, and leadership. Even if physical colonies were temporarily lost, they argued that survival depended on patience, observation, and preparation. Yet even this cautious reasoning did not fully alleviate anxiety, as the Council felt the oppressive presence of an alien intelligence watching and calculating every move, a silent opponent that seemed to understand human behavior as well as humans themselves, making every plan feel fragile and temporary. Outside the chambers, communication lines were sporadic, and occasional reports from automated systems described strange anomalies. Lights flickering without power, machinery operating seemingly on its own, energy bursts in abandoned sectors, all suggesting that the aliens were experimenting, testing limits, and probing human technology. Each report reinforced the sense that humanity had entered a new stage of vulnerability, where even isolation was no protection. And the Council understood that they were the last line of oversight, the silent guardians of a species temporarily in retreat. As the days turned into weeks, the Council members adapted to their new reality, balancing fear with careful planning, coordinating limited countermeasures, and monitoring alien activity while remaining hidden. Despite isolation and tension, they discovered a growing sense of determination, a quiet resilience. Knowing that even from behind closed doors, their vigilance could shape the survival of humanity. The silence from evacuated colonies became a reminder that survival required not only courage, but patience, strategy, and unwavering attention, and that the Council's role was now both a burden and a shield for all of humanity. Unseen alien probes began moving quietly through abandoned human colonies, slipping past defenses and scanning systems with precision. They gathered data on technology, infrastructure, and patterns of human organization. Engineers monitoring the signals were shocked at how advanced the probes were. Some devices appeared to adapt instantly to attempts at interference. Human technicians tried repeatedly to track or block them. But the probes moved with an intelligence that seemed almost alive, leaving behind subtle disturbances that were difficult to trace. Reports from distant outposts described strange phenomena. Energy surges where none should exist, machinery activating without human input, communications becoming distorted, and small but critical failures in planetary infrastructure. The Council reviewed these updates with growing alarm, realizing that the aliens were not attacking directly yet, but they were shaping human systems in ways that could have lasting consequences. Each report painted a picture of an enemy that was patient, methodical, and far more capable than anyone had imagined. Council members debated strategies to respond, but every option carried risks. Any overt action could expose their presence and invite direct retaliation. The aliens seemed to anticipate human moves, reacting subtly to each adjustment, forcing the Council to act indirectly. Monitoring systems and automated defenses became their only tools. And even these offered limited insight, as the probe's actions were designed to confuse and test, almost as if the aliens were experimenting with humans the way scientists experiment with lab subjects. Within the Council chambers, tension rose steadily. The members realized that every small failure in the evacuated colonies could provide the aliens with critical knowledge, understanding human technology, habits, and problem-solving methods. Advisors warned that even minor mistakes could have cascading effects, potentially allowing the aliens to compromise vital systems. The Council struggled to maintain control over what they could, while accepting that many outcomes were now beyond their influence. Every decision became a calculation between risk and survival. Military analysts reported more troubling patterns, noting that probes were coordinating with one another, acting as a network that adapted to human interference. Simulations suggested that the aliens were mapping escape routes, resource locations, and defensive weak points. The Council faced the uncomfortable truth that retreating humans had given the aliens time and space to learn, prepare, and exploit. The threat had become not just physical, but intellectual, as alien intelligence outmaneuvered human predictions at every turn. Attempts to interfere with the probes using remote hacking or electronic countermeasures had mixed results. Some probes were temporarily disabled, only to be replaced by others that quickly adapted. The Council observed how the aliens seemed to learn from every attempt, improving efficiency and testing human adaptability. Every failure reminded them that intelligence alone could not defeat cunning and preparation, and that the aliens' patience was as dangerous as their technology. Patience that could wait out humanity if needed. Council members also noticed the psychological effect of the probes. Even without direct attacks, humans monitoring the systems felt stress, fear, and uncertainty. This invisible pressure began to affect judgment, slow decisions, and internal disputes. Some members argued that humanity had underestimated the aliens, failing to recognize the strategic value of observation and subtle influence. Others suggested that careful study and patience could still provide an advantage, creating a tense balance between caution and desperation in Council deliberations. Despite the challenges, the Council worked tirelessly to analyze patterns, adapt defenses, and predict the probe's next moves. They established remote monitoring networks, created redundancies in systems, and trained specialized teams to respond rapidly to unexpected disruptions. The effort was exhausting, but it also fostered ingenuity and cooperation. Members realized that survival now depended on adaptability, foresight, and an unbroken commitment to understanding an enemy who never acted randomly. Every subtle disruption was a lesson, every probe movement a warning that the aliens were patient, intelligent, and always observing. As weeks passed, the Council understood a critical truth. The alien probes were more than mere tools. They were a silent strategy to control, destabilize, and study humanity without open conflict. The lessons learned from observing them would be essential in planning any future moves. And while the probes tested human limits, the Council discovered that resilience, quick thinking, and careful observation could turn even subtle attacks into valuable intelligence, proving that even in the shadow of a superior enemy, humans still had a chance to survive, adapt, and eventually fight back. Fear and responsibility weighed heavily on the Council. Each member felt the pressure of knowing that the survival of billions depended on their decisions. Disagreements became frequent and sharp. Tempers flared during long strategy sessions. Some members accused others of acting too cautiously, while others feared that any aggressive action could trigger disaster. The isolation of the Council intensified these tensions, as there were no nearby colonies to provide support or reassurance. Every decision carried moral and strategic weight, making the chambers feel like both a command center and a pressure cooker. The debates grew more personal as members questioned loyalty, competence, and judgment. Whispers of sabotage or betrayal spread among the Council, fueling suspicion and paranoia. Advisors argued about whether someone had leaked information that the aliens might have intercepted, and whether humanity's retreat had already been compromised. Alliances shifted unpredictably, and friends became opponents overnight. Every member tried to assert their perspective, knowing that the wrong recommendation could lead to widespread destruction. The Council became a microcosm of human uncertainty, reflecting the stress and fear of a species on the brink. Meanwhile, reports from distant systems continued to arrive, often incomplete or delayed, describing unexplained energy surges, subtle malfunctions in infrastructure, and the presence of alien probes testing human technology. The Council reviewed each report carefully, understanding that these were not random events, but deliberate acts designed to measure response, test patience, and gather intelligence. The Council realized that the aliens were watching, learning, and adapting to every human move, and that any misstep could provide them with critical insight, increasing the sense of urgency and tension within the chambers. Some members argued for immediate counterattacks, believing that showing strength might deter further probing. But others warned that premature aggression could expose humans to overwhelming retaliation. The question of timing became central to every discussion. Every suggested plan was analyzed for risk and consequence. Simulations were run repeatedly. Yet even the most detailed models could not account for the aliens' intelligence and unpredictability. Frustration mounted, as the Council realized that survival depended not only on action, but on patience, adaptability, and careful reading of an enemy far beyond human experience. Within the Council, fatigue and stress took their toll. Long hours of decision-making, constant alerts, and the emotional burden of being humanity's last line of defense caused tempers to fray. Some members became withdrawn, while others grew argumentative or controlling. The balance of power shifted constantly, with new alliances forming around ideas of strategy, ethics, or risk tolerance. Each member struggled with the knowledge that even the smallest oversight could lead to disaster, and that the Council's cohesion was as important as any technological advantage. At the same time, the Council faced the challenge of incomplete intelligence. Alien movements remained largely invisible, their probes subtly interfering with human systems, and the Council could only infer patterns rather than directly observe them. This lack of certainty forced decisions to be made on probability, intuition, and cautious reasoning. Debates often ended in stalemates, as no one had full confidence in any plan, and yet indecision was not an option. The aliens' patience was testing human endurance as much as human strategy, pushing the Council to its limits. Some members tried to maintain morale, reminding colleagues that humanity had survived far worse challenges through ingenuity, adaptability, and cooperation. These voices emphasized that while fear was natural, allowing it to dominate decisions would only worsen outcomes. Small successes in monitoring and countering probes provided glimpses of hope, showing that careful observation and precise action could still influence events. Even in the shadow of a superior enemy, these moments of progress fostered determination and renewed focus within the Council. As days passed, the Council began to recognize patterns in alien behavior, learning that the probes and subtle attacks were designed to provoke reaction, assess capabilities, and exploit weaknesses. This understanding allowed the Council to adapt, creating redundancies, improving observation networks, and preparing contingency plans. That every member realized that patience, resilience, and careful coordination were as essential as technology or firepower, and that survival now depended on the Council's ability to remain united, analytical, and adaptable under constant pressure. Despite internal tension, disagreements, and fear, the Council slowly built a rhythm, balancing caution with strategic action, monitoring alien activity while maintaining secrecy, and preparing for larger confrontations yet to come. The challenges of isolation, uncertainty, and subtle alien manipulation strengthened their resolve, proving that even in extreme stress, humanity could find ways to endure, innovate, and respond. The Council understood that their unity, judgment, and resilience were the last barriers protecting the remnants of human civilization from complete collapse. Amid the constant reports of alien probes and subtle attacks, a small team within the Council worked tirelessly to analyze the patterns of alien behavior. Late nights were spent running simulations, comparing data from multiple colonies, and cross-referencing energy signatures. Slowly, a disturbing picture began to emerge. The aliens were not simply exploring or attacking, they were orchestrating a carefully planned strategy that went far beyond simple conquest. Every probe, every movement, every disruption seemed to be part of a larger design. And the Council realized that humanity had underestimated their opponent. The team noticed that alien fleets and probes were focusing on critical human infrastructure, transport hubs, power networks, and resource centers, almost as if they were mapping human civilization in preparation for a complete takeover. Simulations showed that the aliens anticipated human responses, countering strategies before they could be executed. The Council members understood that the retreat had given the aliens time and space to study humanity's weaknesses. The very act of hiding, once considered a safeguard, had been turned into a strategic advantage for the enemy. Debates erupted within the Council as the implications became clear. Some members argued that humanity had to act immediately, launch strikes, and reclaim control of key systems before the aliens solidified their advantage. Others cautioned that rash action could expose their forces to overwhelming retaliation. The discussion highlighted the tension between urgency and patience. Every member recognized that they were facing an intelligence far beyond human understanding, one that could predict moves, manipulate systems, and exploit even the smallest mistakes. The team analyzing alien patterns discovered a chilling detail. The aliens were not just observing, but shaping human systems, subtly altering technology, creating vulnerabilities, and testing reactions. Each probe seemed designed to provoke specific responses, revealing human decision-making patterns. The Council realized that the aliens were studying humans as much as human systems, learning how to exploit emotions, strategies, and weaknesses. This insight forced the Council to rethink their approach, understanding that survival would depend on unpredictability, creativity, and the ability to act in ways the aliens could not anticipate. Amid these revelations, some Council members began to question the ethics of their own decisions. The retreat that saved human lives also allowed the aliens to experiment freely. The balance between survival and responsibility weighed heavily on them. Accusations of recklessness and poor judgment surfaced, tempers flared. Yet even in the midst of disagreement, there was a shared understanding that humanity's survival depended on carefully calculated risks, and that hesitation could be just as dangerous as overreaction. The Council began exploring possible countermeasures, focusing on intelligence gathering and controlled operations to disrupt alien mapping efforts. Teams were dispatched to infiltrate or monitor regions under alien influence. Limited actions were taken to mislead or confuse probes without revealing the Council's presence. Every step required precision, as a single miscalculation could reveal human locations or plans. The Council learned that indirect strategy, patience, and subtlety might be more effective than brute force, and that understanding the alien mind was now as critical as any weapon. Despite careful planning, uncertainty remained. The aliens' intelligence and adaptability made predicting outcomes nearly impossible. Simulations offered probabilities, not certainties, and each decision carried weighty consequences. Council members found themselves relying on intuition, experience, and creativity, combining technological insight with strategic thinking. Slowly, they began to recognize patterns in the chaos, learning that the aliens valued patience and observation, that they responded to predictable behaviors, and that human ingenuity might still provide an edge if used wisely. As understanding grew, so did the Council's sense of urgency. They realized that waiting too long would allow the aliens to complete their preparation, solidifying control over key systems. Yet acting too soon could provoke overwhelming retaliation. The Council faced a delicate balance. Every action was a gamble, every choice a test of judgment, and the knowledge gained from studying alien patterns became the foundation for planning humanity's next move. The revelation that the aliens had anticipated so much left the Council both wary and determined, knowing that intelligence, strategy, and adaptability were now humanity's greatest weapons. In the end, the Council recognized a critical truth. The aliens were not merely invaders, but masters of long-term strategy, patient, intelligent, and adaptive, and humanity's survival depended not just on technology or firepower, but on understanding the enemy's methods, anticipating their moves, and using creativity and unpredictability to regain initiative. Every lesson learned from studying the alien strategy became a building block for a future counterattack, and the Council realized that even in retreat, humans could plan, adapt, and survive against an opponent who seemed to know every step before it was taken. Deciding that waiting any longer would risk total loss, the Council began planning a bold countermove. The strategy was risky, involving limited strike teams sent into territories now influenced or monitored by the aliens. Each mission was carefully designed to disrupt communications, sabotage logistics, and gather intelligence without exposing humans unnecessarily. The Council knew that failure could be catastrophic, yet inaction was equally dangerous. Survival now required courage, precision, and the willingness to gamble everything for a chance to regain control. Teams of elite operatives were assembled, trained for stealth, speed, and adaptability. Simulations were run repeatedly, predicting potential alien responses, and contingency plans were drafted for every possible scenario. Each strike had to be coordinated across multiple systems, with timing so precise that even a small error could alert the aliens. The Council monitored preparations anxiously, knowing that these missions represented humanity's first step from passive observation to active engagement, a step that could determine the species' future. As the operations commenced, tension was palpable. The first teams infiltrated alien-monitored zones, moving with silent precision, disabling key communications nodes, and collecting valuable intelligence on alien fleet movements. Each success was carefully measured and reported back to the Council, providing a glimpse of hope in the otherwise grim scenario. Yet, even minor setbacks created panic, as one miscalculation could compromise an entire mission, and the Council realized that the margin for error was razor thin. Meanwhile, the aliens reacted in subtle ways. Small disruptions in human systems hinted that they were aware of interference, but could not immediately locate the source. The Council observed patterns of adaptation, realizing that every human strike was teaching the aliens something, forcing them to adapt as well. This created a tense game of intelligence and strategy, a battle of wits in which humans had to outthink an opponent far more experienced and patient, understanding that every move mattered more than brute force. Inside the Council chambers, discussions turned to strategy refinement, analyzing the outcomes of each mission, debating how to improve efficiency, and weighing the risks of escalating actions. Advisors argued over whether to push further into alien-controlled territory or focus on defensive consolidation. Every suggestion was scrutinized, simulations were updated with the latest data, and the Council members realized that adaptability and speed of decision-making were now as important as courage, as the aliens responded quickly and unpredictably to human actions. Despite the danger, small victories boosted morale. Successful operations disrupted alien logistics, created temporary confusion in their fleets, and demonstrated that human ingenuity could still impose limits on the alien advance. These victories, however temporary, reinforced the Council's belief that humanity could survive if clever strategy and precision were applied consistently. Each success became a lesson, teaching the Council and operatives how to anticipate alien responses, exploit weaknesses, and use the environment and technology to their advantage. Yet, tension remained high. As every mission, carried the possibility of catastrophic failure. The Council had to balance risk and reward, knowing that any mistake could expose humans and compromise future operations. The weight of responsibility pressed heavily on each member, and even in moments of success, there was no room for complacency. The aliens' intelligence and adaptability meant that humans could never afford predictable behavior, and every move had to be calculated, deliberate, and flexible. As weeks passed, the countermoves began to show larger effects. Alien communications were disrupted in critical sectors, their logistical operations slowed, and intelligence gained from missions allowed the Council to anticipate certain fleet movements. This incremental progress demonstrated that even against a superior and patient enemy, human ingenuity and coordinated action could make a difference. The Council realized that the path to survival was not just confrontation, but careful, strategic disruption, using intelligence, stealth, and creativity as weapons. By the end of the operations, the Council had learned valuable lessons about the aliens' methods, weaknesses, and patience. And humanity had shown that even in retreat, it could strike back, adapting quickly to challenges and taking calculated risks. The counter-moves did not guarantee victory, but they proved that humans were not powerless, that their resilience, ingenuity, and courage could turn the tide of events, and that even in the shadow of overwhelming odds, careful strategy, bravery, and intelligence could create opportunities for survival, hope, and future resistance. The Council watched the results of their risky operations unfold. The strike teams had managed to disrupt alien communications, delay fleet movements, and gather intelligence. Yet, these victories came at a cost. Some teams were lost, equipment destroyed, and critical systems temporarily compromised. The Council understood that survival required sacrifice. Each loss weighed heavily on their conscience. Yet they also realized that even in retreat and under pressure, humanity had demonstrated resilience, ingenuity, and the ability to challenge a superior force. Reports from across affected colonies showed small but significant effects of the operations. Alien logistics slowed, supply lines became unpredictable, and communication networks experienced intermittent failures. These disruptions revealed that the aliens were not infallible, that patience and intelligence did not make them immune to clever, targeted action. The Council studied these patterns carefully, learning which strategies were effective and how humans could leverage their unique creativity and adaptability to continue resisting. Inside the Council chambers, a sense of cautious optimism began to emerge. Members reflected on humanity's unexpected successes, recognizing that even in apparent defeat, humans had left their mark. The aliens had been forced to adjust, rethink, and respond to actions they had not fully predicted. This realization brought a renewed determination. Council members knew that while the threat was far from neutralized, the balance had shifted slightly, proving that persistence, strategy, and ingenuity could influence the course of the conflict. The Council also considered the psychological impact of their operations on the aliens. Even subtle disruptions created uncertainty, forcing them to spend resources on analysis, adaptation, and defense rather than simply advancing their plans. Humans had managed to turn the tables, showing that their creativity and resilience could challenge the alien superiority. These small victories reinforced the belief that survival was possible, and that with careful planning, humanity could continue to influence events, even from a position of retreat. As the Council coordinated the next steps, they emphasized flexibility, observation, and preparation. Understanding that the aliens were still patient, intelligent, and adaptive, every decision was made with caution, yet with an eye toward creating opportunities to regain territory, protect human populations, and disrupt enemy operations. The Council learned that intelligence, strategic thinking, and careful risk-taking were more valuable than sheer force, and that even in a difficult situation, humans could find ways to fight back, survive, and adapt. Communication networks between scattered human settlements were restored cautiously, allowing the Council to coordinate future actions while maintaining secrecy. The operations had strengthened the bond between humans still under Council guidance and created a sense of shared purpose, hope, and resilience. Council members understood that unity, discipline, and creativity would be key to navigating the uncertain path ahead. as every success reinforced the importance of coordination, planning, and calculated risk. Meanwhile, the aliens adjusted to human disruptions, but the Council observed that their response was slower than expected, showing that human ingenuity could create unexpected challenges for even a superior opponent. This knowledge encouraged further strategic planning, highlighting that patience, observation, and precise action could yield significant advantages, and that the Council's role was now not only to guide survival, but to exploit opportunities created by careful human intervention. Despite losses and ongoing threats, the Council reflected on a critical lesson. Even in retreat, humanity could leave a legacy, demonstrate resilience, and influence outcomes. Every mission, every disruption, and every adaptation had shown that humans could think creatively, act decisively, and survive against an enemy far stronger and more patient. The operations proved that survival depended not just on fleeing or hiding, but on intelligence, strategy, and courage, leveraging even small advantages to create hope and opportunities. By the end of these events, the Council understood that the story of humanity was far from over. The aliens had been challenged, forced to adjust, and reminded that humans were not powerless, that even in apparent defeat, persistence, strategy, and ingenuity could shape the future. The Council prepared for continued operations, confident that humanity's silent efforts had created opportunities, safeguarded critical knowledge, and proved that even in adversity, humans could endure, adapt, and leave a mark that the aliens could not ignore. Humanity's legacy, as observed by the Council, was no longer measured solely by territory or population, but by resilience, creativity, and the refusal to surrender. The operations had shown that even against a patient and superior enemy, humans could fight, survive, and plan for a future return. The Council, battered but unbroken, continued their vigilance, knowing that every subtle action, every careful plan, and every act of courage contributed to a long-term strategy, and that humanity's story was still being written, with hope, determination, and intelligence guiding the way.